everybody and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be teaching you how to crochet this very pretty shell mile a minute scarf or wrap and how to do the tassels at the very end. Now this is fantastic if you have a sort of light, airy, mohair, fancy yarn like this, but it also works very well with just traditional normal yarn. So don't be put off if you haven't got this fancy type of yarn. It looks beautiful with anything. I'm going to take a moment to just have a really quick chat with you about the materials, how much you're going to need, how many strips, etc. before we leap straight on in. So if you don't need that, follow the chapters along the bottom to leap straight to the very first strip. All right, material time. Now for my wrap here on the table, originally it started off as a scarf. Now for a scarf, I did 5 strips wide and 80 shells long. Now for that, all I required was 1 ball of Lion Brand's Shawl in a Ball yarn with a 4mm crochet hook. I went on to adapt this to be a wrap by simply making it wider. I took mine to 9 strips wide. Now for that, I needed just under 2 balls of the Shawl in the Ball yarn. However, because I started off as a scarf, I didn't take the shell strips quite as long as I should have for a proper wrap. So if you are going to make a full wrap like I have here, I'd advise maybe taking it to 90 shells rather than the 80. You can of course take it even longer if you want a very generous wrap, and you can of course take it wider. Just be aware you will probably need more yarn for that. So if in doubt, get 3 balls of the Shawl in the Ball if you want a super generous long wide wrap. Now the Shawl in the Ball yarn is not what I would class as beginner friendly at all. It is very, very beautiful, as you can see, with these lovely great long ombre strips, but this sort of thick, thin, tinsely yarn is an absolute nightmare to work with if you are not experienced with frogging and all those sorts of things. So I definitely wouldn't advise it if you're a beginner. You can use any yarn for this project. It particularly suits this sort of light, airy yarn, but don't let that put you off. I'm going to demonstrate using a normal, solid 100% acrylic yarn so you can clearly see what it is that I am doing. All the information you'll need for this scarf is down in the description box below this video. So don't forget to click show more or the little down arrow to expand that box where everything is down there. All right, let's leap straight into how you make this very beautiful mile a minute shell scarf / wrap. To begin, we're going to make our first shell strip. Now, if you are going to put tassels on the end of your project like I have, it makes sense to leave a longer tail than you usually would to incorporate into the tassel. This is entirely optional. You do not need to put tassels on the end, and if you'd rather weave your tails in, that is fine. But for the purposes of this, I am going to leave a slightly longer tail. Then pop a slip knot onto your hook. And we're going to go ahead and chain 6. Then join with a slip stitch to that very first chain you made to form a ring. Chain 4. And now we're going to form the shell. We're going to do our stitches in a slightly unusual fashion. We're going to be working double crochet stitches. However, we are going to be pulling them up very, very tall. So it is almost the same action as if you were doing a puff stitch. So we're going to yarn over, go into that central ring and pull up a loop. Then pull it up really tall. You want to be loose, relaxed and airy when making this shell wrap. Then we're going to complete our double crochet as normal. So you've got 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through the first 2, keeping it nice and tall, yarn over, pull through the final 2. So you'll have very long, very loose, very airy double crochet stitches. This may seem a bit odd at first, but after a while you will get so used to just pulling them up. I promise it is a breeze and it works up very, very quickly. So that's our first elongated double crochet. We need 5 more, all worked into that ring. Just pull that loop up nice and tall. So you should have, it will feel lovely and squishy. There'll be a bit of bounce to it and a bit of a sort of a fat puff effect going on. Then to finish this very first shell, we're going to chain 4 and then single crochet back into that chain 6 ring. That's your first shell formed. Chain 4 and turn. Now we're going to work into this chain 4 space immediately behind the single crochet where we just ended the last shell, and into this chain 4 space here, 6 double crochet, but pull them up weirdly tall. Once you have your 6 double crochet stitches, chain 4 and single crochet into that chain 4 space where you've been working all your stitches. That is your second shell formed. They stagger offset from each other as we go. Again, chain 4, turn your work, and working into this chain 4 space that you last created, 6 of your sort of pulled up tall, loose, I don't know what to call them, double crochet stitches, 6 of those into that chain 4 space. Chain 4 and single crochet back into the same chain 4 space that you've just been working into. So you would keep building your shells in this fashion for as many shells long as you want your project to be. So you chain 4, turn your work, and into the chain 4 space, 6 double crochets pulled up lovely and tall and squishy. The key to this is definitely being relaxed. You don't need to worry about tension in this project. It's designed to be squishy. And once you've completed those 6 stitches, chain 4 and single crochet back into that same chain 4 space. So keep going, creating your shells for the first strip. For this tutorial, I'm just going to go ahead and make 10. For my scarf, I did 80 shells. And if you were going to do a wrap, I'd suggest anything between 90 to maybe 100, depending on how long you want your wrap to be. So I'm just finishing up my final shell of this small little demonstration strip, doing my chain 4, ending with a single crochet. So once you have the desired amount of shells, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 in my case, snip your yarn, leaving a decent tail to incorporate into the fringing or indeed to weave back in. Chain 1 and pull that yarn all the way through. Pull it tight and that will hold for now. So you have your first strip. Now before we make the second strip and start joining as we go, I want you to be aware that for each strip we join, we will be alternating which shell you join to. I will be really clear and tell you, but I just wanted to say it before we start joining in case you go ahead, join strip number 2 and assume it is the same from that point on. Strip number 3 will be joined differently. So definitely pay attention and watch all of this video before you launch right into it. That being said, let's start on strip number 2 and how you join as you go. So I'm just going to pop my first strip to one side for just a second, and I'm going to begin my second strip in exactly the same way as we did the first. So slip knot, chain 6, then slip stitch to form a ring. And then into that ring, I'm going to create my first shell, exactly the same way as we have been doing. Chain 4, 6 of your elongated double crochet stitches into the ring. Chain 4 and then single crochet back into that ring. For strip number 2, you need to make 2 shells in advance. That's 1, so I'm going to go ahead and make my second shell. And for strip 2, we will be joining to the third shell of strip number 1. You'll notice if it is this way, you've got number 2. You want to flip it so you have 1, 2, third shell sticking out. Once you've identified that third shell so that you want it to be looking like this, this is the shell that we are going to attach to. Once you've got this second strip joined, it's nice and easy to spot whether it's the right way round or not for all subsequent strips. This is the most important one, joining strip number 2. So keep your eye on this 1, 2, third shell of strip number 1. chain 4, turn your work and pick up your first strip. And we're going to work into this third shell. So if you line up the piece you've just made, having turned, you'll see it mirrors the piece underneath. Now we're going to slip stitch to the first stitch, not the chain 4 space, to the first stitch of this third shell. So just slip stitch under there. Now work your shell as normal. This is definitely one of those, me explaining it sounds more complicated than you doing it. So I definitely advise doing this along with me, and you'll realize it is actually a bit simpler than I'm making it sound. So that's my third shell joined to the third shell of strip 1. So if you lay it over the top, pull my hook out, you'll see they're the opposite of each other when they're flat, but if you lay them over the top, they're the same. So for the remainder of joining strip 2 to strip 1, chain 4, turn and complete your 4th shell. So you joined to the 3rd, crocheted the 4th. Now we're going to join to the 5th. So chain 4, turn your work, and how I like to do it is just pop it on top of that strip number 1. And on the 5th shell, slip stitch under the very first stitch. Then complete your shell as normal. So you'll be joining on every other shell and all the odd numbered ones for these first 2 strips of joining. Chain 4, turn, you'll see we've joined that one, so form your next shell. We're going to keep joining as you go up the side. You want the same amount of shells in your second strip as you have in your first strip. So for me, it's 10. So I've done 2, 4, 6, and I'm joining on each odd numbered shell. So shells 7 and 9, I will join to this first strip. If in doubt, flatten your work onto its friend And if it looks the same, you're joining it the right way. So you join when you are creating these outside shells. So chain 4, connect, then complete your shell. Now you've joined one shell, create another without joining. I've done 8 shells of my 10 for my strip. So now it is time to join number 9. So I've joined one, made one. Now it's time to join one again. And because I just joined one, I make one. This is my final shell, shell number 10 for my sample piece of strip number 2. Once you've completed your final shell, finish it just as before with a chain 1, snip your yarn and pull it through. So just as a super quick recap, when joining strip number 2 to the first one, you make a shell, join it on the 3rd, make a shell, join it on the 5th, make a shell, join it on the 7th, make a shell, join it on the 9th. All the odd numbers join together. You want to leave these bottom ones free for a bit of movement. Now to join your 3rd strip to the 2nd strip. So when joining strip 2 to 1, we joined on the odd numbers, starting at number 3. For strip number 3, we're going to join on the even numbered shells, starting with shell number 2. So go ahead and make your first shell. So I've made one shell, and now I'm going to join my 2nd shell to the 2nd shell of the 2nd strip. So just as before, chain 4, turn, which will give you the exact same shape as on this 2nd strip. And we're going to join to the 2nd shell, just as you did in the last strip, only this time, instead of joining to shell number 3, we are joining to shell number 2, and we'll be joining all the even numbered shells. So shell number 2, 4, 6, 8, all the way up the side. So we join one, and once you've joined one, then make one without joining. Join one, make one. Join one on these even numbers, make one. So I'm about to join and make shell number 4. Just like before, if in doubt, flip it over when you're ready to join, and if it matches the pattern underneath, rather than being the opposite, if it matches the pattern underneath, you can join and create the next shell. So just as before, oops, put my yarn in the wrong way around. Join one, make one, join one, make one, all the way up, but instead of joining to shells 3, 5, 7, you're joining to 2, 4, 6, so all the even numbered ones. So because my sample is 10 shells long, I'm about to do my 10th, and it's an even number, so I'm joining to my even number of the other strip. I do hope this makes sense to you, and I'm not utterly baffling you with even and odd numbers. It's just that's how I found it nice and easy to remember. On one strip you're joining to the odd numbered shells, and on the next you're joining to the even. This is my final shell of the row, so I'm going to finish it like we finished the others with a chain 1, snip it, pull it through. When you lay your strip, if I turn it sideways, that you've just joined onto the strip you've joined to, you'll see they are the same. Then when you flip it out, you'll see you've got the opposites. A handy tip: if you are partway through your project, grab a stitch marker and pop it into just the chain 6 ring of the last strip you made. For if you're putting down your project and you're going to come back to it another day, mark the last strip you made. That way, when you pull it out of your project box, you're not going to start joining to this side over here and get utterly baffled as to why you haven't got a third shell to join to, and it's a second one. Having that visual reminder that, oh, wait, it's the wrong way around. That 100% will save your brain a lot of stress later down the line. Trust me, I nearly undid several strips on my wrap because I thought I'd done it wrong. When I dragged it out my project box, all I had done is flipped it round the wrong way. So with your very last strip marked from this point on, when you join the next strip, you just joined on the second shell. On the next strip, you would join on the third shell. The strip after that, the second shell. And you're going to alternate between joining on the third and joining on the second as you go along. So strip number 4, join to the third shell. Strip number 5, join to the second. Strip number 6, join to the third. Strip number 7, join to the second, etc., etc., etc. A way I like to remember it is if the strip you are creating is an odd number, so this is strip number 3, you join on the even numbers. And if the strip you are making is an even number, so strip number 2 or strip number 4, which you would go on to make next, you join on the odd. Now, I know that probably doesn't work for a lot of people, and I've probably confused you all massively, but you do what works for you. This is definitely a trust the process, pay attention to which strip you are making and where you join it to begin. It's simply a case of alternating joining to the third shell or joining to the second. And as you get going, you'll end up spotting it super duper easily. Once you have made all your strips, you can either weave in these ends if you don't want any tassels, weave them all in, or if you do, I'll show you exactly how to make your tassels and where to place them on either side right now. To make your tassels, grab something that you can wrap yarn around. It doesn't matter what it is, it's just so that your tassel lengths will all be roughly even. Then grab your yarn and we're going to wrap it around about 8 times. Now, the more times you wrap, the fatter and more generous your tassel will be. This is quite a lightweight little thing, so I don't need too many, but wrap however many times you want. Just remember that number because that's the same amount of wraps you're going to want to do for each and every tassel. So that's counting as pretty much 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then I'm going to bring that yarn down, it's at the back here, pop my finger on it and grab my scissors. Then I'm going to snip this yarn and then holding on to everything still, I'm going to snip it along the bottom. Then pinch at the top where all your wraps are and you have your length of yarn. Then for the bottom of your shawl, I'm going to use a slightly larger hook than we did for the actual crocheting. Into your initial chain 6 section here, pop your hook in from back to front, grab those loops and pull them through that chain 6. Then pop your finger through that hole and you're going to grab the other end of the tassel and at the same time grab the tail from the end of your work, and we're going to pull the tail and the tails of the tassel through this loop. Then pull it nice and snug. And that's your tassel done. Easy peasy. So you do them in the chain 6 space all along the bottom, and then at the other side of your wrap, we're going to add our tassel just in between the last 2 stitches that you made by your tail. So wrap your yarn, snip it and get your loops, and just as before, from back to front, just go in between those last couple of stitches. You don't need to be too perfect. Pull all those loops through. Grab the tails and the tail from your work and pull them down and through. And then tighten up those strands. That way, your tails get hidden into the tassels. Do that for all your ends, top and bottom, and then once they are all done, grab your scissors, smooth out all your tassel ends and trim them so they're nice and neat along the bottom. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I do hope I haven't confused you too much with the sequence order of how to attach your shells. Sometimes I can give too much information and that can lead to unnecessary overcomplication. So if you do have any questions at all, please feel free to drop them in the comment section below and I will do my best to get to you as soon as possible. However, If you're like, Robin, you've talked way too much already, I got it, let me get on and crochet, then you crack on, you crochet, and I really hope you make yourself beautiful, unique looking scarves and wraps of your own. So until next time, happy crocheting. Bye.